Hi, Gratitude family. This is Melanie. I'm giving thanks to you today for being one of my readers, and I'm sharing with you the April article about self-worth. And it's a conversation that I think we all need to have. You know, what it means to be worthy in the world, and also what it means to be unworthy. And where did that even come from? That, you know, the concept that we are unworthy as human beings. So I did some digging, and I came across this association between what I call the founding myth, and this is the founding myth. And look, bear with me because I hope I make sense. But the founding myth of all relationships on the planet between men and women is that we had Adam and we had Eve, and somehow Eve was able to seduce Adam to eat the apple from the forbidden tree. And apparently when Adam took a bite of that apple, all hell broke loose. And what that, I think, represented symbolically through the churches is that apple also represents sexuality, and to taste the forbidden fruit. Once that's happened, that's it. You've turned your back on God, and that's it. So we have this myth that runs through our culture of Adam and Eve, and it's Adam's fault it's Eve's fault that Adam took of the apple, or that he experienced sexuality, because apparently after that Adam wanted to keep tasting the forbidden fruits from many trees, and not just apples. And here we have this relationship with the story of that it's Adam's fault. In other words, that the man, the masculine, it's his fault that things have gone wrong. However, really it's her fault. So it's his fault, but actually it's her fault. So there's blame. There's blame happening. And when I look at blame in relationships between men and women now on the planet, what I can always sense is that whenever somebody's blaming someone, that what's seating that what's underlying that blame is the energy of shame. Shame is such a low vibration. In fact, when you look at Richard Dawkins' scale in the book of Power versus Force, you'll look at the scales of vibrationary levels of emotions, and the emotion of shame is so low on the vibrationary scale that the only thing after that is death. So to have to feel shame means that you have to that your vibration is so low that you're almost at death point. So shame is not something that wants to be felt by an ego or by a person. It's not something that we go, hey, I'm going to feel some shame today. Who's coming? No, we just don't do that. So if anything, we'll blame situations in order to deflect that shame from the soul. It's like, no, that's you. That's her fault. She did that. I'm feeling like this because of what she did. And this is our myth. This is what our relationships have been based on for centuries. This is going back, way back. So here we are. We have this myth, this platform, if you like, that all relationships are based on. So where does unworthiness come in? Unworthiness comes in to this story because what we resist persists, and while ever there's a culture and a climate of blame in our society, what we're doing is, you can guarantee if someone's doing that, they're also doing that. But this is easy. This is harder. So if there's blame in any story, then there is an avoidance of shame. And what that means is that somewhere in the psyche of the person, of a soul, somewhere in the psyche is this idea that I'm wrong. It's my fault. I am to blame. I'm wrong. And there is your unworthiness, because if you're wrong, you can't be worthy. You're stuck. You're actually stuck. And when you live inside that program of I am unworthy, you become estranged from yourself, and that is the greatest loss of your soul. You know, to implode that essence of I am unworthy. It's self against self. Now this is where it gets really interesting. When you have self against self in any makeup, it's almost impossible to have a connection with your own sexuality. So here we have our founding myth. Here we have a lifetime of relationships that have gone wrong, or that have been rocky, or that don't work. And then here we have the mind that comes in and says, I am wrong. And then we have self against self, and then we have a disconnect from our own sexuality. So it makes a lot of sense. But what's needed? Where do we need to go with this? What's needed is that reconnection. What's needed is for us to stop doing this, but also to stop doing this, and to start doing this, and to reclaim our sexual energy, to reconnect to ourselves. Because if we're not connected to our own sexuality, how can we possibly connect in love and in openness without shaming or blaming with somebody else? So it's a good trick. It's a really good trick with the guilt that's been imploded on culture through religion. It's a really great trick. Because when you're not connected to your own sexual power, you're not empowered as a human being. And when you're not empowered as a human being, you're vulnerable. And you're vulnerable to suggestion. You're vulnerable to being controlled. You're vulnerable to a whole bunch of energies and forces that you really don't need to be vulnerable to. Now here's the good news. The good news is that this is a collective condition. This is something that every single person is working through right now, and that you can flip it. That you can flip this shaming, blaming wound out of your consciousness in a moment. Once you see what's going on, that you just caught up in this massive, massive, big law of attraction wheel that's going through society, and you're just part of that. And all that's needed is actually, that's an old myth. It's a founding myth, and I'll use the word myth in capital letters. It's not even real. Who knows what went on back in the garden, back in the day? Who knows? Who was there? But I know it's not like what the myth is alluding to. So here we are at the end of this conversation, and redemption now is on the cards for everyone. And I've written in my article that redemption equals the restoration to the original sense of worth, to our own self-worth, the original sense of worth, which is that we are divine beings, and that we are loved, and we are worthy. Am I worthy? Yes. Are you worthy? Yes. In the diary, we've got some worksheets that you can do, and your story is your story, and your story is beautiful because your story holds keys to your redemption. So there's a whole page to write your story in the gratitude diary. And the question is, what is the story that contributed to your own sense of unworthiness? What's your story? I want to hear it. And then what are your behavioral compensations, or your game? How do you behave? What do you do? What's your game? So how do you behave when you're avoiding your shame story? Everybody has one. Everybody has a shame story. I had a shame story. I took 6 months sitting on the lounge. In fact, I watched every episode of Sex in the City back to back. It came in a shoebox. And I processed my shame story, and it was low time. It was a really low time, but it took 6 months, and you know, I'm glad I did the work. So when you're avoiding your shame story, how do you behave? You know, what do? Look at your motivations around romantic relationships. You know, like what's driving you to want to connect with the opposite sex? What's driving that? Why do you feel incomplete without that? What's driving you in your career? What's driving you to get that next raise or that next bit of kudos from your workplace? What's driving you to get that cosmetic surgery? What are your drivers? And that'll have a look at that. That'll be your game. That'll be the things that you do that are specific to you, so that you can avoid the descent into actually landing feelings of unworthiness and feelings of shame, that really, once they're felt and once they're acknowledged, they can be redeemed. Well, that was a serious talk, wasn't it? That's it from me today. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next month with another little conversation from the Gratitude Diary. I love hearing what you've got to say, so leave your comments below. Click the subscribe button so that you don't miss a video, and give us the thumbs up if you enjoy what you see. Bye for now.